Have you ever made a decision that you thought was the right one at the time, only to realize later that it wasn't quite what you expected? Maybe it was a small choice, like trying a new recipe that didn't turn out as planned, or something much bigger, like deciding to move into a nursing home. If you ever wonder whether moving into a nursing home is the right choice for you or a loved one, or if you've already made that decision and are now having second thoughts, this video is for you. Today, we're going to talk about something that's not always easy to discuss: the realities of moving into a nursing home. It's a topic that many of us avoid because it's emotional, complex, and deeply personal. But it's also one that deserves our attention, especially if you or someone you care about is considering this option. Over the course of this video, we'll explore 5 hard truths about life in a nursing home. Truths that I wish I had known before making the decision to move into one myself. Now, I want to be clear. This isn't about scaring anyone or saying that nursing homes are inherently bad. For some people, they can be a wonderful solution, providing care, community, and peace of mind. But for others, like me, the experience can be far from what we imagined. And that's why I'm sharing my story, to help you make the most informed decision possible, one that's right for you and your unique circumstances. So, let's start with the first hard truth: loss of independence. When I first moved into the nursing home, I told myself it was the best decision. I was getting older, and I thought I needed more help than my family could provide. I imagined it would be like living in a supportive community, where I could still maintain some control over my daily life. But the reality was quite different. Suddenly, I found myself living by someone else's schedule. Meals were served at specific times, whether I was hungry or not. Activities were planned without much input from the residents. Even simple things like deciding when to go for a walk or what to watch on TV felt like they required permission. It was a stark contrast to the life I had lived before, where I could make my own choices and follow my own rhythm. And it wasn't just the schedule that bothered me. It was the way it made me feel. I started to feel like I was losing a part of myself, like I was no longer in charge of my own life. It's a feeling that's hard to describe unless you've experienced it yourself, but it's one that many people in nursing homes struggle with. Now, I'm not saying that everyone will feel this way. Some people adapt quickly and find comfort in the structure. But for me, it was a harsh reminder of how much I value my independence and how much I missed it once it was gone. This brings me to the second hard truth: the emotional toll of leaving your home. For many of us, our homes are more than just buildings. They're filled with memories, comfort, and a sense of belonging. They're where we raised our families, celebrated milestones, and created a life that was uniquely ours. So, when the time comes to leave that behind, it can feel like losing a part of yourself. I remember the day I moved out of my house. I walked through each room, touching the walls, the furniture, the little knickknacks that held so much meaning. It felt like I was saying goodbye to a dear friend. And even though I knew it was a practical choice at the time, it didn't make the emotional weight any easier to bear. Once I was in the nursing home, those feelings didn't go away. In fact, they only grew stronger. I missed the familiarity of my own space, the way the sunlight streamed through my kitchen window in the morning, the sound of the birds outside my bedroom. The nursing home was nice enough, but it wasn't home, and that difference made all the difference. What I didn't realize at the time was how much those feelings would affect my overall well-being. I started to feel more isolated, more disconnected from the life I had known. It was a loneliness that went beyond just missing my house. It was a longing for the sense of identity and comfort that came with it. Now, I share this not to discourage anyone from considering a nursing home, but to highlight how important it is to prepare for the emotional impact of such a move. It's not just about packing up your belongings. It's about acknowledging the emotional weight of leaving behind a place that holds so much meaning. And that brings us to the third hard truth: the cost, financial and emotional. When I first started looking into nursing homes, I knew it would be expensive, but I didn't fully grasp just how much it would cost. Not just in terms of money, but in terms of emotional strain as well. Let's start with the financial side. Nursing homes can be incredibly costly, and the expenses add up quickly. There's the monthly fee, of course, but there are also additional costs for things like medication management, specialized care, and even basic amenities. For many people, including myself, it meant dipping into savings or relying on family for support. And while I was grateful for the help, it also came with a sense of guilt, like I was becoming a burden on the people I loved. But the financial cost was only part of the equation. There was also the emotional cost of feeling like I was losing control over my own life. Every time I saw a bill or had to ask for financial assistance, it reminded me of how much my circumstances had changed. It was a constant reminder that I was no longer as independent as I once was, and that was hard to accept. What I've learned from this experience is that it's crucial to have an open and honest conversation about the financial and emotional implications of moving into a nursing home. It's not just about whether you can afford it. It's about whether you're prepared for the impact it will have on your sense of self and your relationships with others. Now that we've covered these first three hard truths, loss of independence, the emotional toll of leaving your home, and the financial and emotional costs, it's clear that moving into a nursing home is a decision that requires careful thought and preparation. But there's more to this story, and in the next part, we'll dive deeper into realities of life in a nursing home, including the challenges of adjusting to a new environment and the importance of maintaining connections with loved ones. When I first moved into the nursing home, I told myself it would be an adjustment, and I was right. But what I didn't fully understand was just how many adjustments there would be. It wasn't just about getting used to a new place or a new routine. It was about adapting to an entirely new way of life, one that often felt at odds with the life I had known. This brings me to the fourth hard truth, the challenge of adjusting to a new environment. At first glance, the nursing home seemed nice enough. The staff was friendly, the rooms were clean, and there were activities planned throughout the week. But what I quickly realized was that no matter how nice the facility was, it wasn't my space. It wasn't the home I had spent decades creating, filled with the things I loved and the memories I cherished. One of the hardest parts was the lack of privacy. In my own home, I could retreat to my favorite chair with a book or spend hours in the garden without anyone bothering me. But in the nursing home, privacy was a luxury I no longer had. There were always people around, staff members checking in, other residents passing by, or scheduled activities that left little time for solitude. And then there was the noise. In a place where so many people live together, quiet moments are hard to come by. There were always sounds, conversations in the hallway, the hum of medical equipment, or the TV blaring in the common room. For someone like me, who values peace and quiet, it was overwhelming at times. But perhaps the biggest challenge was the loss of control over my surroundings. In my own home, I could decorate however I liked, arrange the furniture to suit my needs, and create a space that felt like me. In the nursing home, everything was standardized, the same furniture, the same decor, the same layout in every room. It felt impersonal, like I was living in a hotel rather than a home. What I've learned from this experience is that adjusting to a new environment takes time, and it's not always easy. It's important to give yourself grace during this transition and to find ways to make the space feel more like your own. For me, that meant bringing a few cherished items from home, a favorite blanket, some family photos, and a small plant from my windowsill. These little touches didn't replace the home I had left behind, but they did help me feel a little more grounded in my new surroundings. Now, let's talk about the fifth hard truth, the importance of maintaining connections with loved ones. One of the things I worried about most when moving into the nursing home was how it would affect my relationships with my family and friends. I didn't want to feel isolated or disconnected from the people I loved, but I also didn't want to burden them with constant visits or requests for help. What I didn't anticipate was how much effort it would take to maintain those connections. In my own home, it was easy to host family dinners or invite friends over for coffee. But in the nursing home, those spontaneous gatherings became much harder to arrange. There were rules about visiting hours, limited space for guests, and the added challenge of coordinating schedules. Over time, I noticed that some of my relationships began to change. Friends who used to drop by regularly now visited less often, and family members who once called every week seemed to drift away. It wasn't that they didn't care. It was just that life got in the way. And I understand that. But it didn't make the loneliness any easier to bear. What I've learned is that maintaining connections with loved ones requires intentionality on both sides. It's not enough to assume that relationships will stay the same. You have to actively work to keep them strong. For me, that meant reaching out more often, whether through phone calls, letters, or video chats. It also meant being honest about how I was feeling and asking for support I needed. But it's not just about staying connected with family and friends. It's also about building new relationships within the nursing home. At first, I was hesitant to get to know the other residents. I didn't want to replace the friendships I already had, and I wasn't sure I had the energy to start over. But over time, I realized that these new connections could be just as meaningful. I'll never forget the day I met Margaret, a woman who lived down the hall from me. We started chatting during breakfast one morning, and before I knew it, we were sharing stories about our lives, our families, and our experiences in the nursing home. Margaret became a close friend, someone I could laugh with, confide in, and lean on during tough days. What I've learned from this is that relationships, whether old or new, are essential to our well-being. They give us a sense of belonging, a source of comfort, and a reason to keep going, even when life feels hard. Now that we've covered these next two hard truths, the challenge of adjusting to a new environment and the importance of maintaining connections with loved ones, it's clear that life in a nursing home is about more than just physical care. It's about navigating the emotional and social challenges that come with such a big life change. In the next part, we'll explore the final hard truth, the reality of care quality and advocacy. We'll talk about what to look for in a nursing home, how to advocate for yourself or a loved one, and why it's so important to stay informed and involved in your care. As we've been discussing, moving into a nursing home is a decision that comes with many layers: emotional, financial, and practical. It's not just about finding a place to live. It's about navigating a whole new way of life. And while there are certainly benefits to living in a nursing home, there are also challenges that can catch you off guard if you're not prepared. This brings us to the fifth and final hard truth, the reality of care quality and advocacy. When I first moved into the nursing home, I assumed that the care I received would be consistent and reliable. After all, that's what I was paying for, right? But what I quickly learned is that the quality of care can vary widely, not just from one facility to another, but even within the same facility. There were days when the staff was attentive, kind, and thorough, but there were also days when it felt like I was just another name on a checklist. Meals would arrive late or cold, medications would be administered at the wrong times, and requests for assistance would go unanswered for far too long. It was frustrating, to say the least, and it left me feeling like I had little control over my own well-being. What I didn't realize at the time was how important it is to advocate for yourself, or to have someone who can advocate for you. In a setting where staff members are often overworked and under pressure, it's easy for things to fall through the cracks. And if you don't speak up, those small oversights can quickly add up to bigger problems. For me, advocating for myself meant learning to be more assertive. It meant asking questions about my care, keeping track of my medications, and speaking up when something didn't feel right. It also meant building relationships with the staff members who were most involved in my care, so they could get to know me as a person, not just a patient. But self-advocacy isn't always easy, especially if you're dealing with health issues or feeling overwhelmed by the transition. That's why it's so important to have a support system in place, whether it's a family member, a friend, or even a professional advocate who can help ensure that your needs are being met. What I've learned from this experience is that the quality of care you receive in a nursing home often depends on your ability to advocate for yourself and stay informed about your rights. It's not enough to assume that everything will be taken care of. You have to be proactive and involved in your own care. Now, I know this might sound daunting, especially if you're already feeling overwhelmed by the idea of moving into a nursing home. But here's the good news. You don't have to navigate this journey alone. There are resources and support systems available to help you every step of the way. For example, many nursing homes have resident councils or family councils that provide a platform for addressing concerns and improving the quality of care. There are also organizations and advocacy groups that specialize in elder care, offering guidance and support to residents and their families. The key is to stay informed, ask questions, and never be afraid to speak up for what you need. Because at the end of the day, this is your life, and you deserve to live it with dignity, respect, and the best possible care. As we wrap up this discussion, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've covered. We've talked about the loss of independence, The emotional toll of leaving your home, the financial and emotional costs, the challenge of adjusting to a new environment, the importance of maintaining connections with loved ones, and the reality of care quality and advocacy. Each of these hard truths is a reminder that moving into a nursing home is a deeply personal decision, one that requires careful thought, preparation, and ongoing effort. But it's also a decision that can be made with confidence if you have the right information and support. So, if you're considering a nursing home for yourself or a loved one, I encourage you to take your time, visit different facilities, ask lots of questions, and trust your instincts. And if you've already made the move and are struggling with the transition, know that you're not alone. It's okay to feel overwhelmed, to miss your old life, and to grieve the changes that come with this new chapter. But it's also important to remember that this is just that, a new chapter. It doesn't have to define your entire story. With the right mindset, support, and resources, you can still find joy, connection, and purpose in this stage of life. Before we go, I want to thank you for joining me on this journey. Sharing these hard truths hasn't been easy, but I hope it's given you some valuable insights and reassurance. If you found this video helpful, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What resonated with you the most? Do you have any tips or experiences to share? Let's keep the conversation going, because we can all learn so much from each other. And if you haven't already, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Life after 60 is full of challenges, but it's also full of opportunities. And together, we can navigate them with grace, strength, and resilience. Thank you for watching, and remember, no matter where life takes you, you have the power to make it meaningful. Here's to living your best life at any age. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.